think you know Adolf Hitler. You've never seen him like this before. Hitler's contemporaries, from his birth in Braunau to his death in the bunker, authentically flesh out the picture. Who was Hitler? Hitler neither finished school nor had any vocational training. He occasionally lived in homeless shelters or on the street. He refused to pursue a regular job. To this day, it seems inexplicable that he could come to power. Out of nowhere, Hitler became the Führer, leader of the German Reich, one of the most powerful men of the 20th century, starting an inferno that engulfed the world and brought death to millions of people. The nation worshipped him and followed him blindly into the abyss. But during his lifetime, he kept his origins and his life secret. No one should know how or who he was. Fascinating and oppressive accounts from companions, friends, and enemies, as well as the most extensive collection of archive material ever shown. Much of it, hitherto unpublished, reveal who Hitler was and how he could become what he was. A notorious liar and an unscrupulous murderer. Hitler's power and popularity are unquestioned. And Göring, the second man in the state, is similarly popular as well, if not as close to the Führer as others. Hitler has created a secret private life and spends a lot of time in the Alps at Orbersalzburg, which is declared a restricted area. Hitler threatens to invade Austria. The Austrian Chancellor surrenders, allowing the country to be taken over. In a subsequent plebiscite, nearly 100% of Austrians vote in favor of integration into the German Reich. This success encourages Hitler to repeat this tactic with Czechoslovakia, where a substantial German minority lives in the Sudetenland. Will he succeed again?
Has anything like the Third Reich ever existed before? Among the phenomena that I have personally come across in my lifetime, Islam, the Mohammedan world and worldview, comes closest. The word Islam means devotion. It is the same thing as what is expressed by raising one's hand in the Nazi salute in the Third Reich. I am yours in life and in death. Islam is the higher ideal of the two, because it is nobler to serve God than a country or a race. Karen Tanja Blixen, Danish writer.
He has managed to captivate his people using a mystical band that is not even dependent on the National Socialist Party that helped him into power. I often have the opportunity to experience this, indeed in all social circles. Robert Coulondre, French ambassador to Berlin, 1938 and 1939.
Hitler's rule uses an aesthetic of overwhelming to bind the masses to the system. In the early days of his movement, well-organized and choreographed mass marches imply a strength which is in fact non-existent. After the seizure of power, he employs uniforms, dramaturgy, lighting effects known as cathedrals of light, and military pomp to amalgamate and unify the hurriedly summoned masses to a picture of strength, power and violence.
Of the facts themselves, there was no doubt. He had restored to Germany her self-respect and recreated orderliness out of the chaos and distress which had followed her defeat in 1918. Neville Henderson, British Ambassador to Germany.
The year 1937 is the quietest of Hitler's 12-year reign. There are no foreign policy provocations, no new racist laws, no publicly staged pogroms. If one were to believe the footage shot by amateur filmmakers who come from the upper middle class, the people in Hitler's Reich enjoy their lives.
For Hitler, driving is now only possible on the motorways, where the stewards are strictly prohibited from informing anyone en route or in the neighboring villages by phone. Otherwise, he would have to fly or travel by train. But to pay a lady a private visit in Munich, or anywhere else for that matter, is completely impossible. Henry Picker, Senior Executive Officer, Table Talk at the Volksschanze Führer headquarters.
When you meet the Germans, you will probably think they are very much like us. They look like us. Except that there are fewer of the wiry type and more big, fleshy, fair-haired men and women, especially in the north. But they are not really so much like us as they look. Instructions for British servicemen in Germany, 1944. Germany report of the German Social Democratic Party, March the 12th, 1938. Inasmuch as the attitude of a whole nation can be summed up in a single formula, one could say something like, Hitler has the consent of the majority of people in two essential questions. He has created employment and made Germany strong. There is a great deal of dissatisfaction with the prevailing conditions, which, however, only applies to the worries of everyday life, and in most people has not led to fundamental opposition to the regime.
Heinrich Himmler visits Quedlinburg in the Prussian province of Saxony. In the medieval city, he propagates a cult around King Henry I, for Himmler, the founder of the German Reich. The king is buried in Quedlinburg Castle. The Reichsführer SS has been head of the German police in the Reich Ministry of the Interior since June 1936.
Client conversation in Nuremberg, 1945. Göring.
To the outside world, it looked like I was the second man in the government. But after 1942, my influence decreased.
Question. Who were your rivals for power? Göring.
Himmler, later Bormann.
Hermann Göring to his lawyer, Hermann Bruce.
When he had to make big decisions, he went up to Orbersalzburg. Here, life was geared to his personal needs. Strolls around Orbersalzburg, stopping in small guest houses, gave him, as he said, the inner peace and confidence to make the decisions that surprised the world. Albert Speer.
Diary, September the 18th, 1938. Drive to the tea house up on the mountain. It stands majestically in the midst of giant peaks, an undisturbed view. Here one finds clarity and confidence. All the ballast of Berlin disappears. Joseph Goebbels.
The entire Orbersalzburg area is sealed off in 1935. Hitler asks Martin Bormann to pressure the house and hotel owners into selling their property to the NSDAP to create a so-called Führer security zone.
Meanwhile, it had become a custom for everyone who wanted to see their Führer to gather there in the afternoon. An aide gave the signal, and then everyone marched down the hill past Hitler, a touching spectacle of spontaneous tribute. For them, it was one of the biggest moments of their lives. Fritz Wiedemann, adjutant to Adolf Hitler.
One beautiful day, my school friends and I decided to visit Orbersalzburg. Suddenly, Hitler appeared in front of his Berghof residence and greeted the lines of people. When we students from Munich reached where he was, an aide ran down. He told us, "The Führer wants to greet you." We followed him to the Berghof. Hitler stood there and shook our hands. He asked,
"Do you want to have tea with me?"
We found that really exciting, and we were led onto the terrace. Elisabeth Nuller-Neumann, student in Munich.
Adolf Hitler invited a circle of people to Orbersalzburg who were not selected for their politics. He chose those who were agreeable to him, who would not disturb his thoughts with political discussions. Thus, the circle was made up of artists, some women, Fräulein Braun, mostly the secretaries, the personal and army adjutants, Ambassador Hevels, Sepp Dietrich, Professor Morel, Esser, and their wives. Bormann, Brandt, and I were also members of this circle. Albert Speer.
Usually, straight after dinner, there would be a discussion. After that, there was a stroll to the little tea house, half an hour's walk away from the Berghof. Hitler led the way with the honored guests. The others followed far enough behind to be out of earshot. The party met again on a plateau beneath a tea house that had a wide view of the Alps. The way back to the Berghof was always by car. Christa Schröder, Hitler's private secretary.
Hermann Göring does not belong to Hitler's private circle, although he owns a residence on Orbersalzburg too. Hitler maintains no private relationship with him. The same is true of Heinrich Himmler and of Ribbentrop, whom Hitler appoints as foreign minister in February 1938, yet excludes him from his private life around Berghof.
Komm, ja, mein Cäsar. Kommst du mich besuchen? Mucki, kommst du mich besuchen, ja? Komm. Ist ordentlich satt geworden, Cäsar. Los, schön, spring, hopp. So ist gut.
Even as Hitler's deputy, I always had to restrain myself because I often didn't know about plans and projects. In secret, it was determined, and in 1936 then disclosed to the ministers that I would be considered the Führer's successor. Nevertheless, the Führer often did not inform me about important actions. Hermann Göring, conversation with Hermann Bross, Nuremberg 1945.
Volksschanze, Führer Headquarters. Lunch, October the 27th, 1941. The Reich Foreign Secretary is at present hunting pheasant in Sudetenland. This fact once again gave the Führer cause to pour scorn on the royal hunt. All his sympathies are on the side of the poachers, because first of all, these people must really understand something about hunting, and secondly, without the poachers, the most beautiful novels would never have been written. Werner Köppen, Adjutant to Reichsminister Alfred Rosenberg.
He didn't drink a drop of alcohol, never ate meat, didn't smoke. His asceticism was real and not artificial. Hans Frank, Reich Legal Director.
He ate only vegetarian dishes, usually an enormous plate of carrots, peas, asparagus, onions, leeks, sliced kohlrabi and potatoes, all mixed up together in a thick white sauce. Sefton Delmer, British correspondent for the Daily Express in Berlin.
One of those present asked his personal physician whether the health of the Reich Chancellor forced him to keep such a strict diet. And he answered that his Spartan habits were mainly for psychological reasons. Gustav Mannerheim, Finnish Field Marshal.
Apart from its state dinners, his table manners were uncultivated. Reinhard Spitzi, personal assistant to Joachim von Ribbentrop.
Incidentally, the Führer tried to spoil the meat-eaters' enjoyment of their meal. Although he didn't want to convert anyone to vegetarianism, he suddenly began talking about how awful it was walking through an abattoir. Gertraud Traudl-Junge, Hitler's private secretary.
After the meal, there was black coffee, but nothing to smoke. Tobacco was banned from the entire chancellery, even in the toilets. Reinhard Spitzi.
Enjoying meat, he said, triggered a desire for alcohol. And then again, alcohol stimulated smoking. And this was how one vice led to another. Nicotine was, in his opinion, even worse than alcohol. He actually toyed with the idea of totally banning smoking throughout Germany. The campaign would start with a skull and crossbones printed on the cigarette packet. Christa Schröder.
Diary, January the 11th, 1938. Second air raid drill. We learned how to use gas masks. Henrietta Schneider.
Air raid drill at a factory against an attack with conventional and chemical weapons in Brunswick. Founded in April 1939, the Reich Luftschutzbund, or State Air Shelter League, unites all air raid activities. At the lowest level, it consists of volunteers from local communities and, at municipal level, the fire brigades. In 1939, 15 million people are brought together in the Luftschutzbund. During the war, the air raid community is mainly formed of older men and single women.
The Führer had at this time something like the power of Napoleon after Austerlitz and Jena. Winston Churchill, member of the British Parliament.
Seefeld in Tyrol, on the day the Wehrmacht enter Austria. The Austrian NSDAP has been banned since 1933 for terrorist activities. Previously, they had received, on average, less than 25% of the vote at regional elections, but in some cities, such as Innsbruck, more than 40%. On July the 25th, 1934, the Austrian National Socialists tried to stage a coup and failed. Already in July 1936, however, the National Socialists imprisoned in Austria were pardoned. The activities of the party were tolerated and it gained support, especially in Carinthia and Styria.
As far back as I can remember, the rise of Hitler and the powerful country next door cast a threatening shadow over us. Egon Schwartz, Austrian Jewish high school student in Vienna.
People knew about Dachau and Oranienburg. They didn't like to talk about it. Kurt Schuschnigg, Austrian Chancellor.
Apart from his resolve to bring all Teutonic races into the Reich, as so plainly described in Mein Kampf, Hitler had two reasons for wishing to absorb the Austrian Republic. It opened both the door of Czechoslovakia and the more spacious portals of southeastern Europe to Germany. Winston Churchill, the Second World War.
Führer's order, March the 11th, 1938, 8:45 p.m. Operation Otto. The demands of the German ultimatum to the Austrian government have not been fulfilled. To avoid further bloodshed in Austrian towns, the march of the German armed forces into Austria will commence at daybreak on March the 12th.
Adolf Hitler.
On Friday, the 11th of March, 1938, Austrian radio broadcast a program of light music. It was 7:45 in the evening when the announcer suddenly interrupted. The Chancellor was going to speak. Kurt Schuschnigg said that in order to avoid bloodshed, he would capitulate to Hitler's wishes. He ended his speech with the words, "God protect Austria." Dr. Edward Bloch, the Hitler's family doctor, written in US exile, March the 15th, 1941.
Diary, Sunday, March the 13th, 1938. In the evening, the announcement of the new law for Austria, issued by the Führer in Linz. Adolf Hitler is now also the commander-in-chief of all troops in Austria. Henrietta Schneider.
If it is still claimed today that Hitler occupied Austria against the will of the Austrians, that doesn't coincide with my observations. Fritz Wiedemann, adjutant to Adolf Hitler.
It is correct to say that a very large number of Austrians were gladly prepared to accept National Socialism and integration into the German Reich. This number is made up of all those who were disappointed with the politics of compromise of previous years and who doubted that Austria would be able to hold out against National Socialism. Those who expected liberation from what they called clericalism, and above all, those who felt threatened by the Jewish menace. Ernst Rüdiger Stachenberg, leader of the Austrian Home Guard, from March 1938 in exile.
Women, especially, enjoyed decorating themselves with the emblems of National Socialism that they wore as medallions or brooches. By contrast, there was terror and fear among the opponents of National Socialism. The fear was particularly acute among the Jews and led to hasty actions and suicides. Egon Basch, St. Pölten, German-Austrian Jew.
Diary, Tuesday, March the 15th, 1938. We listened to the Führer around 11 o'clock. You asked yourself, can it be possible that we have become a great unified Reich without a war? In the evening, Kurt Riewer's engagement appeared in the newspaper. Henrietta Schneider.
Hitler's speech from a balcony of the Habsburg Palace. As Führer and Chancellor of the German nation and Reich, I report before history the entry of my homeland into the German Reich.
On March the 25th, 1938, Hitler begins the last election campaign of his life. Hitler wants to confirm the annexation of Austria in a referendum. He estimates 80% will vote in favor of it in Austria. With a public information film, the population in what is now the Greater German Reich is informed how and above all where they should mark their crosses in the plebiscite.
Oh, das ist doch ganz einfach. Haben Sie ein Dokument bei sich? Erkennungskarte oder Heimatschein, Taufschein, Reisepass oder sonst eine amtliche Legitimation? Der Meldezettel allein genügt nicht.
Meinen Taufschein habe ich mitgenommen und meinen Heimatschein.
Eines von beiden genügt schon. Und dass Sie keinen Fehler machen, werde ich Ihnen drinnen im Stimmlokal alles erklären. Also jetzt passen Sie gut auf. Der Herr, der dort hinter dem Tisch sitzt, das ist der Wahlleiter. Zu dem gehen Sie hin und sagen Ihren Namen und Ihre Adresse und zeigen ihm Ihr Dokument.
Josef Berghofer, Hauptstraße 43.
Sehen Sie, einer der Beisitzer schaut jetzt nach, ob der Wähler in der Stimmliste enthalten ist. 412. Jetzt bekommt der Wähler einen Stimmzettel und einen Briefumschlag, mit dem er dort in die Stimmzelle geht. In der Stimmzelle macht man da mit dem Bleistift in den großen Kreis, bei dem ein Ja steht, ein Kreuz, und in den großen Kreis, bei dem ein Ja steht, ein Kreuz. Das ist sehr wichtig und legt den Stimmzettel in den Briefumschlag. Auf dem Stimmzettel darf nichts anderes vermerkt werden, als nur das Kreuz in dem Ja-Kreis, sonst ist der Stimmzettel ungültig. Den Briefumschlag mit dem Stimmzettel übergibt man dann dem Wahlleiter, der ihn ungeöffnet in die Wahlurne legt.
Dankeschön. Ist das alles?
Na, eigentlich nicht. Denn nachher, wenn Sie abgestimmt haben, müssen Sie nach Hause gehen und dafür sorgen, dass auch alle Ihre Bekannten rechtzeitig zur Abstimmung kommen.
Hitler estimates 80% will vote in favor of it in Austria. He's more than surprised when on the evening of April the 10th, the referendum results are announced. 99.75% have voted for the Anschluss, more than in the Old Reich. Election Day in Schwetzingen, 10 kilometers west of Heidelberg. On April the 10th, 1938, in combination with the plebiscite on the annexation of Austria to the German Reich, an election for the now Greater German Reichstag takes place. Between November 1933 and April 1938, Adolf Hitler calls 3 elections for the German Reichstag, which has been disempowered by the Enabling Act. These elections to his pseudo-parliament are fixed and anything but free. They do not say anything about the support of Germans for Hitler's policies. For example, unmarked ballots are considered as being in favour. Germans of Jewish descent and so-called Jewish half-breeds lost the right to vote in 1935. Between March 1933 and April 1942, Hitler convenes the powerless parliament to confirm his policies just 19 times.
As it turned out, in the Great German Vote, all the staff in Paul Zollneiss's house, from the chauffeur to the chambermaids, are party members. Everyone is reeling from the euphoria that occurs with the typical signs of an epidemic. Even those far away are exposed to the contagion. Frank Thies, German writer, Fragments of Historical Experiences.
All laws enacted before then, including the Jewish acts that were passed in 1935 in Nuremberg and later strengthened and significantly extended, would be transferred at once and with full force to the new territory, and its entire state and social life turned upside down overnight. Egon Schwartz, Austrian Jewish high school student in Vienna, later historian.
A march passed in Lower Austria to mark May the 1st. Austria's Social Democrats had won more than 40% of the votes in the last 3 National Council elections. The National Socialists tried to win over the Social Democrat supporters who, in the form of the Schutzbund, had once fought street battles with the SA.
Hermann Neubacher, National Socialist, Mayor of Vienna since April the 12th, 1938. Former members of the Schutzbund, we understand you. You believed, as we also believe. You stood up for it, as we did during difficult years. You were revolutionaries, as are we. Today we extend our hand. Are you prepared to work with us faithfully, and until the very last? Then I accept your vow. To our great Führer, Sieg Heil.
Summer at Lake Atta in the Salzkammergut resort. The middle class have also come to terms with the Anschluss, which has been overwhelmingly promoted in mass initiatives and propaganda campaigns. The Catholic German nationalism of the Christian social movement, dominant up until 1938, facilitates the abandonment of almost all resistance. Hitler has imprisoned the leading politicians of the Ständestaat, the corporate class state, as, for example, the mayor of Vienna, Richard Schmitz, and ex-chancellor Kurt Schuschnigg.
Diary, May 26, 1938. I have requested permission to emigrate. I feel that I have to leave Germany before it is too late. War seems unavoidable. It will, I fear, encompass all of Europe, if not the whole world. Bella Fromm, German Jewish journalist.
Membership in the Hitler Youth ends at the age of 18, in the Federation of German Girls at 17. Hitler had appointed von Schirach Reich Youth Leader in 1931 at the age of 24. At that time, the leading cadres of the Hitler Youth were hardly older than those entrusted to them. According to Hitler's instruction, youth should be led by youth.
The National Revolution is undoubtedly a youth movement. The new Germany is being built by the young for the young. The military discipline, which serves as a backdrop to the present drama, provides remarkable contrasts. Antony Count-Subansky, Polish writer.
In 1938, in a revised version of the Marriage Act, conceiving children is defined as the purpose of marriage. The refusal of a spouse is considered grounds for divorce, but the National Socialists cannot stop the long-term trend towards smaller families. The average size of household and family continues to shrink in the years 1933 to 1945. In 1920, there was an average of 2.3 children per marriage. In 1930, 2.2, and in 1940, only 1.8 children. Hitler is driven by the notion that he will only be granted a short life.
Note of a Hitler speech to NSDAP propaganda leaders. He, Hitler, did not have much longer to live, according to human estimates. People did not grow old in his family. It was therefore necessary to solve the problems as soon as possible, so that this would happen during his lifetime. Only he was able to do this. Waldemar Vogt, provincial propaganda leader, Main Franconia.
My personal last will and testament. In the case of my death, I dispose that my remains be buried in the right-hand temple of the Eternal Guardhouse. My coffin should resemble the others. That my entire estate be left to the party. To Fräulein Eva Braun, Munich, a lifelong allowance of 1,000 marks per month. To my sister Angela, Dresden, a lifelong allowance of 1,000 marks per month. To my sister Paula, Vienna, a lifelong allowance of 1,000 marks per month. To my stepbrother Alois Hitler, the lump sum of 60,000 marks. To my trusted Julius Schaup, the lump sum of 10,000 marks and a lifelong monthly pension of 500 marks. I appoint the Master of the Treasury as executor of this testament. In the case of his death, Martin Bormann. Berlin, May the 2nd, 1938. Adolf Hitler.
Trapau lies near the German border. Whenever we came up to the border, several in the group broke away, ran across the borderline, and kissed the German earth. Later, I learned that these children were ethnic Germans who were raised to love Germany. Ruth Elias, Czech Jew.
The history of the Sudeten German liberation movement is closely linked to Adolf Hitler's National Socialism. Although we were never allowed to have a shared organization with the National Socialists in the Reich for political and foreign policy reasons, No artificial barriers could prevent the spirit of Adolf Hitler from attracting ever larger masses of Sudeten Germans. Swastika flags flew on the streets of Sudeten German districts and cities. The marching columns of a faithful German youth, devoted unto death, broke the Marxist rule of violence. Hans Krebs, German National Socialist Workers' Party of Czechoslovakia, MP.
Diary, Monday, September the 12th, 1938. In the evening, we heard the close of the party convention in Nuremberg. Adolf Hitler called on President Benesch. If the Sudeten Germans are not protected, we know what we have to do. God preserve the existing peace. Diary, Thursday, September the 15th, 1938. My 66th birthday. England's Prime Minister Chamberlain is with the Führer today. I had many guests. Henrietta Schneider.
The British Prime Minister made a really good impression on our people. But unfortunately, he wasn't the right man for Hitler. He was too kind and decent. One should have found a different negotiating partner for Hitler. A bulldog like Churchill or a hard-headed colonial general. A negotiator like that would have made more of an impression than benign Uncle Chamberlain with his umbrella. Reinhard Spitzi, personal assistant to Joachim von Ribbentrop.
Speech in the Berlin Sportpalast, September the 26th, 1938. I also want to declare now, before the German people, that with respect to the Sudeten German problem, my patience is now exhausted. I have made Mr. Benesch an offer, peace or war. Either he finally gives the Germans their freedom, or we will come and take this freedom ourselves.
Adolf Hitler.
Diary, Tuesday, September the 27th, 1938. Hitler spoke to the German people last night. If Benesch doesn't accept his offer, we'll move in on October the 1st. That means war. Henrietta Schneider.
There were various different tones to these discussions. Hitler found friendly words of recognition for Chamberlain, and Lotus spoke the oft-quoted sentence,
"We don't want any Czechs."
Paul Otto Schmidt, interpreter for Adolf Hitler.
Diary, Wednesday, September the 28th, 1938. Tomorrow, a meeting in Munich between Hitler, Daladier, Chamberlain and Mussolini. Henrietta Schneider.
In spite of the harshness and ruthlessness I thought I saw in his face, I got the impression that here was a man who could be relied upon when he had given his word. Neville Chamberlain, British Prime Minister, letter to his sister.
Diary, Friday, September the 30th, 1938. The negotiations in Munich have had a happy ending. The Czechs have to pull out of the Sudetenland tomorrow. Hitler, our Prince of Peace. Henrietta Schneider.
The genius of the Führer and his determination not to shrink, even in the face of war, have again achieved victory without the use of force. Alfred Jodl.
Letter to Elizabeth Wagner, October the 9th, 1938. The occupation is going smoothly. Unfortunately, we've swallowed 500,000 Czechs. Eduard Wagner, Colonel in the General Staff.
The increasingly heady atmosphere of the days of the occupation has already ebbed away. Nevertheless, one has to say that National Socialism has been accepted everywhere. Soon after the occupation, we received letters from relatives of refugees, mostly comrades, that clearly showed that they too had been convinced by National Socialism. Germany Report of the German Social Democratic Party, December the 10th, 1938.
Everyone concurs that the Munich Agreement is Hitler's victory. But Hitler himself sees it as a defeat. He would have preferred to gain what he's achieved by force rather than peacefully.
Sudeten German Diary, October the 19th, 1938. On the order of our Führer, we've been able to occupy a new piece of Germany for Germany. We were all prepared to give our best, including our lives, for this task. Benno von Arendt, Reich Set Designer, Reserve Officer.
Protocol of Interrogations in Berlin Gestapo Office, November the 21st, 1939, 8:30 a.m. In autumn 1938, the working class generally expected a war. After the Munich Agreement, the working class was quiet again. I was already convinced last year that the Munich Agreement would not hold and that war was unavoidable. George Elser, failed assassin of Hitler in November 1939.
On Monday, November the 7th, 1938, the stateless 17-year-old Jewish boy Grünspan goes to the German embassy, demands to speak with one of the counselors, is taken to the duty counselor vom Rat, and shoots him. Grünspan describes the motive for the act as wanting to take revenge for his fellow believers, for the Polish Jews forced out of Germany. Walter Tausk, German Jew, Wroclaw, Diary.
In Munich, the failed putsch of 1923 was celebrated with great pomp. The SS marched through all over the city. The radio announced the death of the diplomat. Edgar Furchtwanger, German Jewish neighbor of Adolf Hitler.
Die Feierlichkeiten am 9. November in München fanden ihren Abschluss mit der Vereidigung der SS-Anwärter auf dem Platz vor der Feldherrnhalle in Anwesenheit des Führers.
Following a traditional march to the Feldherrnhalle, at a social evening of NS party leaders and old comrades, Joseph Goebbels announces the death of Ernst vom Rath.
I go to the party reception in the Old Town Hall. Very busy. I report the matter to the Führer. He orders...
Withdraw the police. The Jews should for once feel the people's anger.
Joseph Goebbels, diary.
It was clear to me that something would happen outside in the Reich. I believe that the saying, "the Jews will pay for this," was widely misunderstood. Hartmann Lauterbacher, Deputy Leader, Hitler Youth.
Diary, November 1938. In the night that brings the news of the death, a pogrom breaks out all over Germany. All the synagogues are on fire, windows are smashed in all the Jewish shops, the wares destroyed. Apartments are broken into. Thousands of Jewish men are arrested and locked up in concentration camps. Kita Kollwitz, painter and sculptress.
The synagogue in Esslingen in Württemberg is plundered by residents of the town on the afternoon of November the 10th. Religious artifacts are burned.
Hermann screamed hysterically.
These damn idiots! I have to collect every old bucket and every old newspaper in Germany, and then a horde of hooligans goes around and destroys things worth millions in one evening.
My concern was the methods that the regime was using to deal with its political opponents. I was deeply shocked, and I said to Hermann, "Fate has blessed your party so. Don't sin." Emmy Göring, Historical Events and Confessions.
When that segment of the population that had not taken part either as police or SA awoke after the fatal night and saw the destruction that had taken place, a sequence unfolded that its instigators had not expected. An unmistakable, deep sense of depression and shame seized the public. People said, "I'm ashamed to be a German." Rudolf Bing, German-Jewish businessman, Nuremberg.
November the 10th, 1938. Meeting in the Ministry of Aviation. Göring again openly expressed his reluctance, but nevertheless issued an abundance of repulsive regulations. Things like Jews should not visit theaters, museums, and beach resorts, and shouldn't drive cars. Göring said himself in the meeting, he wouldn't want to live in Germany as a Jew anymore. Hans Kerr, official in charge of special tasks in the Economics Ministry, Memoirs.
As with the Night of the Long Knives, we considered the Kristallnacht to be an unavoidable peripheral phenomenon of the otherwise accepted National Socialist seizure of power, which only now began to reveal its revolutionary character. Rudolf Wolters, architect, employee of Albert Speer.
Entering public parks is forbidden to Viennese Jews, along with the Schönbrunn Palace Gardens. In the districts of the German Ostmark, as in the rest of the German Reich, the Nuremberg race laws apply. Between March 1938 and May 1939 alone, 100,000 Austrians of Jewish descent leave their home country, with most having to abandon almost all their property. By 1942, another 30,000 will emigrate or flee.
December the 6th, 1938. A boycott has been issued against Jews throughout the Reich. The ban against Jews in Berlin applies to all theatres, cinemas, cabarets, concert and lecture halls, museums, fairs, the radio tower, the Deutschlandhalle and the Sportpalast. In addition, all outdoor and indoor swimming pools. as well as from Wilhelmstraße and Vossstraße to the Reich Monument and the Zeughaus. Erich Ebermeier, writer.
Harassed by the Nazi authorities, around 120,000 German and Austrian Jews succeed in leaving their homeland by the beginning of the Second World War.
I used my final days in Germany to bid farewell to my old homeland. With my children, I walked through the spring along the old familiar paths through the forests and fields, where every tree and every house had associations. Never again in my life would I walk on these paths. A man comes along, the Führer of 80 million people, and declares that Jews can't have a home. That Jews are a nomadic people who can never settle, who always need to roam. Hugo Moses, German Jewish owner of the Progress Factory, Cologne.
Diary, January the 1st, 1939. A new year. May it be a year of peace. Thea Sternheim, art collector and author.
Until the beginning of October 1938, the White Meadow was in the Czech part of the Sudeten Mountains and is now part of the German Reichsgau Sudetenland. This new district has almost 3 million inhabitants who see themselves as Germans and welcome the Anschluss, the union with the German Reich. The thus far peaceful extension of territorial dominion is also received extremely positively in the other parts of the German Reich. On the 13th of February 1939, Hitler tells a few confidants that he intends to take action against the Czechs in mid-March. German propaganda is adjusted accordingly.
Diary, Berlin, March the 14th, 1939, nighttime. Foreign broadcasters are reporting that the Czechoslovak President Hacha arrived in Berlin today and was received by Hitler. Does this mean war, after all? Erich Ebermeier, writer.
In the meantime, I dealt with the transcription of the statement of just a few lines, reading, "The Czechoslovak president has declared that he has trustingly placed the fate of the Czech people and country in the hands of the Führer of the German Reich. The Führer accepted this declaration and expressed his intention of taking the Czech people under the protection of the German Reich and guaranteeing them autonomous development of their ethnic life suited to their character." Paul Otto Schmidt, interpreter for Adolf Hitler.
For 3 hours, Hitler conducted a discussion with the president of Czechoslovakia. We all knew that it was about war or peace. Suddenly the door opened, Hitler rushed out and proclaimed,
"So people, good news. Hacha has signed the agreement. I will go down as the greatest German in history."
Christa Schröder, Hitler's private secretary.
Letter to Elisabeth Wagner, March the 15th, 1939, evening. The Führer drove to Prague at 4 o'clock this afternoon. He is staying in Prague Castle. In the morning, there will be a parade. His dream is thus fulfilled. Eduard Wagner, Artillery General.
Diary, Thursday, March the 16th, 1939. The Führer had the contents of Article 13 on the establishment of the Protectorate announced over the radio. Henrietta Schneider, housekeeper, East Prussia.
After World War I, the Allied victors awarded the Memelland to Lithuania. After threats of military force, Hitler sets an ultimatum for bringing Memelland home to the Reich. In the face of a complete lack of international support, Lithuania complies.
Letter to Elizabeth Wagner, Berlin, March the 22nd, 1939. The Führer will move into Memel, East Prussia tomorrow, but there will be no fuss made about it in the rest of the world. Eduard Wagner.
Diary, Thursday, March the 23rd, 1938. Around 2:30, the Führer spoke to the Memellanders. He had come to Memel in the armoured ship Deutschland with a whole fleet. His words were uplifting. Henrietta Schneider.
Secret report to Ambassador Josef Lipski in Berlin. Everyone is awaiting further steps from Hitler. It is generally assumed that after the annexation of Memel, he has to move on to the settlement demands with Poland, primarily the takeover of Danzig and the corridor. The solution to these questions will meet with understanding and recognition by the German people. Felix Tyszewski, Polish General Consul.
A meeting in Schorfheide near Berlin in spring 1939. Hermann Göring and the British ambassador Neville Henderson.
We had reached the last act of the drama, and the curtain for it had gone up on that momentous March the 31st, when Mr. Chamberlain had announced our agreement with Poland. Neville Henderson, British Ambassador to Germany.
House of Commons, March the 31st, 1939. I have to inform the House that during that period, in the event of any action which clearly threatened Polish independence, His Majesty's government would feel themselves bound at once to lend the Polish government all support in their power. They have given the Polish government an assurance to that effect. I may add that the French government have authorized me to make it plain that they stand in the same position. Neville Chamberlain, Prime Minister.
But no one who understood the situation could doubt that it meant in all human probability a major war in which we should be involved. Winston Churchill, member of the House of Commons.
Letter to his wife, Vita Sackville-West, April the 20th, 1939. Harold Nicholson, Member of Parliament, National Labour Party. There is a break in the crisis, which makes me uneasy. That is one of the worst things with this tension. If Hitler doesn't do anything, we all become uneasy. And if he does do something, we all get frightened.
Hitler deliberately focuses on strengthening military traditions. In Schwetzingen, in the southwestern German provinces, a veteran of the Franco-German War is buried. Everything is now a matter for the party and its structures. A representative of the Wehrmacht holds a eulogy at the grave. In 1939, the NSDAP has 5.3 million members. Its mass organizations such as the SA, the Hitler Youth and the German Labour Front are responsible for another 30 million Germans, a nation marching in step towards war.
May 1939. Dear Dilemma, it's pretty damned interesting. Was up in Danzig for a couple of days. Danzig is completely Nazified. Lots of Heil Hitler, etc. I think that if Hitler can extricate himself from this matter without losing face, he will do so. If Ribbentrop and the radicals get their way, it will be interesting to see what happens in the end. Don't forget, the Poles are no Czechs, and they will fight. John F. Kennedy, letter to his childhood friend, Kirk Lem Billings.
June the 6th, 1939. Amateur footage of the flags in the street Unter den Linden from a window in the French embassy. The SS is distributing German and Italian flags on the occasion of the parade celebrating the return of the Condor Legion from the Spanish Civil War. The Germans have known for only a few weeks that, together with Italian troops, this Luftwaffe unit helped the Spanish fascists to victory over the left-wing Republic, thereby gaining experience of aerial warfare in a covert operation.
Speech at the Carlton Club, London, June the 28th, 1939. What is Herr Hitler going to do? Is he going to try to blow up the world or not? The world is a very heavy thing to blow up. An extraordinary man at a pinnacle of power may create a great explosion, and yet the civilized world may remain unshaken. But the world will go on. Winston Churchill.
The market in Swinemünde, a port on the Baltic Sea in the province of Pomerania. In the mid-1930s, per capita income in Germany is only half that of America. Above all, agriculture, from which 9 million Germans live, is still underdeveloped. In 1928, only 68% of the German Reich could supply itself with food. But by 1939, this share has risen to 83%. Mainly meat and fats still have to be imported. Nobody is starving in Germany anymore. The Germans are doing well.
In my memory, the summer of 1939 will remain a strange unreality of a cosmically disturbed world, as a tragically terrifying calm before the storm. Arno Breker, sculptor and architect.
July the 2nd, 1939. Rudolf Hess deputizes for Adolf Hitler in his function as leader of the NSDAP at the Gautag on the Siegfried Line district celebration in Kaiserslautern, only 40 kilometers from the French border. Since 1936, Hitler has been building the 630-kilometer-long Siegfried Line along the border with France, Belgium, Luxembourg and the Netherlands. Up to 1 million men from all over Germany have been conscripted to work on the fortification of the western border.
I still remember how I threw my aunt's cat from the second-floor window and it landed unharmed. When it had kittens, my cousin Maurice was told to dispose of them. One by one, he hurled them against a wall like snowballs, and they fell lifeless to the ground like empty little bags. This was the first experience of death through violence and a foretaste of what the Nazis were to inflict upon the population of Alsace. Tommy Ungerer, A Childhood Under the Nazis.
Sunday, July the 16th, 1939. A Guard battalion has lined up before Adolf Hitler outside the Museum of German Art in Munich. Since this summer, Wehrmacht officers and party officials are allowed to wear the white tunics as a dress uniform. Hitler, followed by Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler in black SS uniform, walks up the steps of the museum. Inside the museum, too, there are almost exclusively uniformed men to be seen. One of the few civilians present on this summer Sunday is the museum's director, Karl Kolb. uniforms are omnipresent in everyday life in the German Reich. This morning, Adolf Hitler is attending the opening of the Great German Art Exhibition of 1939 at the Museum of German Art. Hitler takes the floor, but, as often, does not speak without notes. It is his last speech on matters of culture. Following this, Hitler inspects the exhibition with his confidant in art affairs, the architect Gerdi Trost. They are accompanied by Dino Alfieri, Mussolini's Minister of Popular Culture, who will become ambassador to Berlin at the end of the year. Most of the exhibiting artists are in tails. Accompanied by Air Force Adjutant Nikolaus von Below and his factotum Julius Schaub in SS uniform, Hitler hurries to his Munich apartment. In the afternoon, more than 30,000 participants in the 2,000 Years of German Culture Parade will file past the Führer.
Ashram at Warda, Congress Party of India, July the 23rd, 1939. Herr Hitler, Berlin, Germany. Dear friend, friends have been urging me to write to you for the sake of humanity. It is quite clear that you are today the one person in the world who can prevent a war which may reduce humanity to a savage state. Are you really willing to pay that price for an object, however worthy it may appear to you to be? Will you listen to the appeal of one who has deliberately shunned the method of war, not without considerable success? Anyway, I anticipate your forgiveness if I have erred in writing to you. I remain your sincere friend, Mahatma Gandhi.
Letter to Max Born, Edinburgh, August the 1st, 1939. I don't want to write much about the witch's cauldron that is Germany. Those who, like you, participated in 1933 have no idea what it is like in 1938-39. Words cannot describe how this great nation is tearing itself apart. Otto Toeplitz, German mathematician of Jewish descent.
The imperial city of Augsburg. In 1939, the medieval trading city has 185,000 inhabitants and has been the location of important industries since the second half of the 19th century. Here too, from the end of the 1930s, there is a consistent focus on war production. The Augsburg-Nuremberg engineering works manufacture, among other things, diesel engines for submarines. The Messerschmitt factories produce fighters and bombers, the Renk factories large gearboxes. From 1943, Allied bombers will begin destroying the Bavarian armaments complex.
The summer was winding down. The weather was warm and sultry, and Danzig's numerous cafes, beer and wine gardens were filled with Germans enjoying themselves, despite all the talk of imminent war. It was difficult to conceive of such folks going to war or causing war to break out over them. William Sharer, correspondent for the Columbia Broadcast System in Berlin.
On August the 11th, 1939, the town of Perleberg in the Prussian province of Brandenburg, northwest of Berlin, celebrates its 700th anniversary. The number of uniformed people in the historic parade shows that the National Socialists have managed to attract both young and old. A music corps of the Luftwaffe. Since 1934, Perleberg has been the location of a military airbase. The Organisation Tot, a paramilitary construction group, the National Socialist Motorized Corps, and the local political leaders of the NSDAP. A brass band of the General SS, followed by regional SS stormtroopers, the Reich Labour Service. Hitler is marching Germany to war.
Hitler could also keep secrets with astonishing mastery. He never told us his secret intentions or informed us about his plans. Christa Schröder.
August the 13th, 1939. Orbersalzburg. Paul Otto Schmidt, interpreter of Adolf Hitler. Hitler was completely set on war.
The British are guilty of everything. The Poles have a serious lesson to learn. The democracies are inferior to Germany and will never fight.
Was the recurring keynote of the German dictator's speeches. The next day, the Italian Foreign Minister Ciano was received at the Burghof. Hitler spoke the following sentence at this event.
I am firmly convinced that neither England nor France will enter into a general war.
Italy's foreign minister cannot talk Adolf Hitler out of his war plans. The Kingdom of Italy is tightly bound by the Pact of Steel to the German Reich. However, the Duce, Benito Mussolini, reveals to Hitler in a letter that the country is not prepared for war. When Hitler gives the order to invade Poland, Italy withholds its allegiance. Hitler doesn't even bother to answer a final attempt at mediation by Mussolini. On August the 19th, Käthe and Erich Höse from Leipzig begin their honeymoon with a canoe trip on the Oder River in Upper Silesian Ratibor. They take Erich's camera.
As I look back at the summer of 1939, I see that I remained woefully ignorant of the secret agreement between Nazi Germany and Communist Russia. William Shirer, U.S. journalist.
For 12 days, the newlywed Leipzigers paddle down the Oder. During this time, Adolf Hitler propels the continent into a world war.
Diary, Paris, August the 19th, 1939. Announcement of a German-Russian non-aggression pact. Thea Sternheim.
At the end of July, on Hitler's approval, Foreign Minister von Ribbentrop and State Secretary von Weizsäcker set the foundations for an agreement with the Soviet Union, which also includes the partitioning of Poland and the Baltic states. Hitler is in a hurry because he believes autumn rains will prevent a motorized war in backward Poland.
On August the 19th, Stalin accepted Hitler's offer with both hands after Hitler had suggested splitting the Baltic into spheres of influence. I noted, but if Ribbentrop travels to Moscow, it means Russia is inviting Hitler to invade Poland. Ernst von Weizsäcker, Secretary of State at the Foreign Office, Memoirs.
Telegram to the German Chancellor, Herr A. Hitler, August the 21st, 1939. I thank you for your letter. I hope that the German-Soviet non-aggression pact will be a turning point and a serious improvement in political relations between our countries. The Soviet government has instructed me to tell you that they agree to the arrival of Herr von Ribbentrop in Moscow on August the 23rd. J. Stalin.
Diary, August the 22nd, 1939. About 4 years ago, the Führer told a foreigner in my presence that he couldn't cooperate with Moscow because it wouldn't be possible to forbid the German people from stealing and at the same time maintain a friendship with thieves. Alfred Rosenberg, Director of the Foreign Policy Office of the NSDAP.
Diary, August the 23rd, 1939. In the evening, I sit in the Pilsner on the Kurfürstendamm. I allow the street life to flow past me. People with a burden, who well know what's going on, somewhat sad and thoughtful. Eduard Wagner, artillery general.
August the 22nd, 1939. The speech in which Hitler addressed military leaders took place in the great reception room of the Berghof. He was of the opinion that, ultimately, the Western powers would not take up the sword. Erich von Manstein, Lieutenant General.
Addressed to the Commanders-in-Chief of the military, August the 22nd, 1939. It was becoming clear to me that a dispute with Poland might take place at an unfavourable time. Here is the basis for this finding. It depends essentially on me, on my existence, on my political ability, for it is a fact that probably no one will ever have the trust of the entire German people as I do. In the future, there will probably never be a man who has more authority than I. My presence, therefore, is of great value. But I can be eliminated at any time by a criminal or by an idiot.
Adolf Hitler.
Diary, Sunday, August the 27th, 1939. Exchange of letters between Hitler and Chamberlain. Hitler wants Danzig and the corridor for Germany. Henrietta Schneider.
Suffocatingly humid days full of fear and expectations. Very calm, now only a few cars, but trains, almost without a break, whistling shrilly. You can't do anything, can't think, can't feel anything other than no war. Marie-Louise Kaschnitz, author, notes.
Diary, Monday, August the 28th, 1939. We believe that there will be war. Yesterday, rationing introduced for milk, fat, coffee, textiles and other things. Potatoes, flour, bakery products, vegetables, eggs are free. Diary, Wednesday, August the 30th, 1939. In the afternoon, troops equipped for war passed for hours, heading for the border. Poland has declared mobilization. Henrietta Schneider.
On August the 30th, Käthe and Erich Höse reached the delta of the Oder River and Stettin, the harbour. Government cruise liners are anchored here, placed under the protection of the Red Cross as hospital ships. 2 days after the honeymooners arrive in Stettin, the Second World War begins. Erich Höse becomes a soldier on September the 1st.
Autumn is coming. The terrifying autumn of 1939. For suddenly the world is trembling. The trembling now felt is long delayed and has time and again been bravely warded off. Hitler invades Poland, England's ward of court. Friedrich Hollander, German composer.
Night of August the 30th, 31st, 1939. In these hours, I knew that if war came, and who could doubt its coming, a major burden would fall upon me. Winston Churchill.
Eduard Wagner, Diary, August the 31st, 1939. With General Halder at 5 p.m., I read the Führer's order.
The Supreme Commander of the German Armed Forces, August the 31st, 1939. Secret command material, top priority, only via officers, 8 copies, second copy. The invasion of Poland is to be conducted according to the Case White preparations, with those changes that occur with the army now in near full deployment. If England and France begin hostilities against Germany, the Western operations of the German armed forces should provide careful consideration of force resources to ensure conditions for the successful conclusion of the operation against Poland.
Adolf Hitler.
It is disturbing to see the amount of responsibility that he bears and accepts. Eduard Wagner.
Private War Diary, General Franz Halder. Demands of the Führer on the military leadership. Destruction of Poland equals elimination of its living power. It is not about achieving a specific line or a new border, but about destroying the enemy. The means are of little concern.
The Führer will no longer speak to anybody from outside. Consultation. We stay in the Chancellery until midnight, and then sleep. Tonight, fate will take its course. Joseph Goebbels, Diary.
Message from Commander of Westerplatte Peninsula to Polish Navy Headquarters in Gdynia, September the 1st, 1939, 0450. At 0445, the armored cruiser Schleswig-Holstein opened fire on the Westerplatte with all its guns. The barrage continues. Henryk Zukarski, Major of the Polish Army.
In Zeiten schwerster polnischer Bedrohung erklärt Danzig am 1. September 1939 seine Heimkehr ins Reich. Noch haben sich bewaffnete polnische Banden im Postgebäude verschanzt. Sie bedrohen von hier aus den Frieden der Stadt. Männer der Danziger Heimwehr räuchern im Schutze eines Panzerwagens diesen gefährlichen Schlupfwinkel aus.
September the 1st, 1939, Friday, 7th day of mobilization, 6:30 a.m. Border overrun everywhere. 10 a.m., the Führer's Reichstag speech. Franz Halder, Chief of the General Staff.
Diary, Friday, September the 1st, 1939. Poland has rejected Hitler's offer. The radio announces the actions of our troops in all of Poland. All our men from 16 to 55 years old have to go to Lützen, East Prussia. Henrietta Schneider.
Now we are at war. God grant that not everything good and valuable should perish. The less time it takes, the better. Yet one must consider that our opponents are not going to reach a peace agreement with Hitler and Ribbentrop. What this means? Who would not be able to see the consequences? Ernst von Weizsäcker, State Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Morning, 10 a.m. Reichstag session. Hitler appears, deadly serious. For the first time in field grey uniform. Members of Parliament rise silently. Then Hitler speaks without notes, describing the events of the last days. Then comes a sentence.
Since 5:45 a.m., we have been returning fire.
Rudolf Jordan, provincial NSDAP leader.
Address before the Reichstag, September the 1st, 1939. I have once more put on that coat that was most sacred and dear to me. I will not take it off again until victory is secured, or I will not survive the outcome.
Adolf Hitler.
I have a clear memory of the day war broke out. The adults were really serious. Many women cried. On the Rhine Bridge, the first refugees of the Second World War passed by. They were farmers from southern Palatinate villages who had been evacuated from the threatened region behind Hitler's acclaimed fortifications along the French-German border, and who were now going to assembly centres with the few belongings they could take. The ramshackle carts were drawn by cows. Helmut Kohl, schoolboy, later Prime Minister of Germany.
Toward the evening of September the 2nd, our son Heinrich was killed in action. The site of his swift and untimely death was the Tuchola forest region at the train crossing near Klonovo. It occurred while Heinrich, a lieutenant and leader of the 1st Platoon of the 9th Infantry Regiment, was advancing against Polish riflemen ahead of his troops. Our son Richard, who is in the same regiment, held the death watch for his brother until the early morning hours of September the 3rd. Ernst von Weizsäcker, Memoirs.
In the early hours, 4 a.m. of September the 3rd, I was accordingly instructed by His Majesty's government to arrange for a meeting with the Minister for Foreign Affairs at 9 a.m. I accordingly handed the final ultimatum from His Majesty's government to Dr. Schmidt at precisely 9 a.m., pointing out that, unless satisfactory assurances were received by His Majesty's government before 11 a.m. British summertime of the suspension of all the German forces from Poland, a state of war would exist between our two countries as from that hour. Neville Henderson.
Then I took the ultimatum to the Chancellery. Hitler's most prominent people were gathered in the room in front of his office. "What news?" asked anxious voices. I answered with a shrug, "Schools cancelled," and entered the next room where Hitler was sitting at his desk, while Ribbentrop stood at the window. I remained some distance from Hitler's desk and slowly translated the ultimatum of the British government. When I finished, there was total silence. Hitler sat as though turned to stone, just looking straight ahead. After a while, he turned to Ribbentrop.
"What now?"
Ribbentrop replied with a quiet voice,
"I suppose the French will issue an identical ultimatum within the hour."
As my job was now finished, I left and told those waiting outside, in 2 hours, a state of war will exist between England and Germany. Goering turned to me and said,
"If we lose this war, then may heaven have mercy on us."
Paul Otto Schmidt.
Berlin, September the 3rd, 1939. When Coulondre returned to the embassy, he was visibly shocked. Without a word, he sat down at the table of the large conference hall and reported the dramatic minutes in the Chancellery. He then paused for a moment, and suddenly this man burst into tears in front of us. Paul Stalin, Air Force attaché in the French Embassy in Berlin.
When France and Great Britain declared war on Germany on September the 3rd, people could hardly contain their happiness. The mood, and not only in Warsaw, was enthusiastic. I immediately sent my sister, who had moved to London with her husband a few weeks earlier, a postcard. It certainly won't be easy, perhaps even terrible, but we are in good spirits because we don't have the slightest doubt that Germany will lose. The postcard never arrived. Marcel Reich-Ranitzky, September 1939, unemployed in Warsaw.
War Diary, September the 3rd, 1939, Sunday, 9th day of mobilization. Declaration of war from England, 11:30 a.m. France, 5 p.m. Order for the transition to a war economy. Franz Halder, Chief of the Army General Staff.
We were woken up at 6 a.m. by a man in a dinghy banging on the side of our boat. "You guys English?" "Yes." "Well, lots of luck. You've just declared war on Germany." We never spoke a word, just went below and filled 2 teacups with warm gin. When we finally arrived at Catalina and joined the others, we found a somber group. Nobody knew quite what to do. Like millions all over the world, it was beginning to dawn on us that we were pawns in a game that had got out of control. David Niven, British Hollywood actor, Reminiscences.
Adolf Hitler accepts the world powers' entry into the war because he considers himself infallible. The extraordinary success leading up to March 1939 has caused his self-confidence to become megalomania. In private discussions, he compares himself to Napoleon, Bismarck and Frederick the Great.
Letter to Johanna Nossa, September the 3rd, 1939. We leave Berlin in a couple of hours. For me, this means going through thick and thin with the boss. I don't want to think about the fact that it may come to the ultimate. But if so, then my life will no longer have any value. Christa Schröder.
On September the 3rd, 1939, Great Britain and its Commonwealth dominions, Australia and New Zealand, and the Indian Empire declare war on the German Reich. The Union of South Africa follows on September the 6th, and Canada on September the 10th.
I remember the amazement when the message came in that Churchill was going to be appointed to the War Cabinet. Holding the ominous press dispatch in his hand, Goering stepped from the doorway to Hitler's living quarters and said wearily, "Churchill's in the cabinet. That means war really is about to begin." Albert Speer, Memoirs.
Churchill loves war. He makes no secret of it. Even boasts about it. Joe L. Sawyer, bomber pilot, Royal Air Force.
Diary, Wednesday, September the 6th, 1939. We shall fight to the last and may win, but I confess I don't see how. Sir Alexander Cadogan, British Under-Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs.
War Diary, September the 13th, 1939. The Fuhrer's motorcade roared by. We saw our Führer. He was going to the front. Gerhard M., soldier, Flensburg.
If a shot is fired from a house behind the front line, the house will be burned to the ground. If a shot is fired from a village behind the front and it can't be determined which house the shot came from, the entire village will be burned down. Fedor von Bock, commander of Army Group North, order of the day.
Diary, September the 25th, 1939. Today I was combing my hair and a shaft of sunlight shone on my head, and I was shocked to see how dusty my hair was. I had no grey hairs in my glossy thatch, or very few before the war, but if I keep on like this I'll be white by Christmas. Nella Last, housewife, Barrow-in-Furness, Lancashire.
Diary, September the 28th, 1939. Warsaw has finally fallen. Mountains of corpses have to be removed. The Russians are marching into Poland and are moving up to an agreed demarcation line. Scattered Polish divisions are leading a heroic, desperate struggle. Udo von Auvensleben, Captain, 16th Tank Division.
some 16,000 members of the German armed forces die, and 30,000 are wounded in the Polish campaign of 1939. Sources report 68,000 dead and 130,000 wounded on the Polish side. Tens of thousands of Polish civilians are killed in the course of the 5-week conflict.
Troops paraded in front of Hitler. The Lanchner brothers filmed him. I was standing near Hitler and saw how the troops looked at him, mesmerized. Without exception, they appeared ready to do anything for him. If he were to give the order, they would die for him. Leni Riefenstahl, director and actress.
In addition to the free city of Gdansk, western parts of Poland are annexed and added to the Greater German Reich. From October 16, 1939 onwards, the remaining central Poland is subject to the authority of a German civil administration as a general government. The successful combat troops are immediately transferred to the Western Front and replaced by occupation forces. These usually consist of older reservists who have served in the First World War. According to the Hitler-Stalin Pact, Eastern Poland falls to Russia. The German-descended families living there are relocated to Greater Poland. The landscape around the city of Posen, which is Reichsgau-Wartheland, is affiliated to the Greater German Reich.
And a nation of 35 millions fell into the merciless grip of those who sought not only conquest, but enslavement, and indeed extinction for vast numbers. Winston Churchill, The Second World War.
Diary, October 12th, 1939. The guessing game begins. What's happening in the West? Several hundred kilometers behind the front line, people do not realize that there's a war going on. Friedrich Kellner, Laubach, Hessen.
Hard work. One has made one's mark in Germany when one is allowed to work late at the office. In part, the military qualities of the Germans are linked to their industriousness. One doesn't leave the war and go home at 6 p.m. Hans Habe, Hungarian-Austrian-American writer and newspaper publisher.
Diary, December the 31st, 1939. Cyril Joad pounds pacifism after dinner. His line is that the ordinary person in England would be less unhappy after a Nazi victory than if he or she lost their sons, lovers or husband. I do not stay to watch the new year. The old year is foul and the new year terrifying. What shall I have to record this time next year? Harold Nicholson.